The truth regarding the self is that it is ever innately egoless and non-dual. Because it is egoless and thus non-dual, it is utterly formless, without beginning or end. And there is for it no object. For the unborn, there is no creation. And being non-dual, it ever is as it is. It is Brahman, the one absolute. This, then, is your real and only identity. If you have the idea that the Supreme Self is one thing and yourself is another, such is only ignorance, which creates the illusion of duality. It is dualism, and we could say it is also polytheism. Dualism inasmuch as it postulates two things, the Supreme Self and one's own self. And polytheism inasmuch as if the Supreme Self is to be regarded as omnipresent and all-encompassing and all-absorbing, and then there is something styled as oneself that can stand apart from it, independent and utterly resistant to that all-absorbing, all-comprehending, all-permeating reality, then that is like having two gods, with the ego one being considered more powerful than the Supreme One because of its ability to stay separate, in spite of the nature of the Supreme Self. This doesn't make for peace, nor for a clear knowledge of reality. Again, if you view yourself as one thing that will become transformed into the Absolute Self and thereby be liberated, it would be wise to ask yourself, to inquire, who is this self that is going to be transformed? Your existence will not actually change its nature. Being is invariable. It will not actually be transformed from one thing to another. Even if change were possible in in your own nature, it might change back again. And there would then be no eternal peace and happiness of liberation, which again is not true and not helpful. If your aim is realization of the highest truth, you must first and foremost know yourself. If you inquire, who am I, with the aim of knowing yourself, you will find that all the duality just mentioned, all the division into objects just mentioned, all the changefulness just mentioned, is merely a product of ignorance. It is only so much delusion. And if delusion is dissolved or destroyed, then what remains is what has actually always been the case. Therefore, self-inquiry does not alter your nature. Nor does it give you a nature different than what you already have, but simply and clearly reveals what in truth you are. You start with your own existence and come to abide in a knowledge of that existence by that existence itself. Not through or by another, for such would be delusion. And we don't gain self-knowledge through delusion. But that which is knowledge itself, pure consciousness itself, your very own being, knows itself without misidentification, without the superimposition of that which is not yourself upon yourself. When submerged in ignorance, when there's the appearance of delusion, such is euphemistically referred to as bondage, because of the suffering one feels. But in reality, there is no limitation ever imposed upon your nature, the real self. You yourself, of the nature of bliss, appear as if engaged in suffering. You yourself, being the reality, infinite and eternal, appear as if limited, transient, and caught up in the unreal. Such is only ignorance. Self-knowledge, self-inquiry, destroys that ignorance, which is not the destruction of anything real, it's only the destruction of an illusion. But with that destruction of illusion, all bondage and suffering vanish, never to return. Freedom from ignorance is euphemistically referred to as liberation, because there is no more bondage. But when you know yourself as being consciousness bliss, as the Brahman that you actually are, the real self, you find that you have never been bound and never will be bound. So that it is not that you were bound at one time and liberated later. For the knowledge of the self is the knowledge of the perpetual reality, the innately egoless state of being. You find that you have not been bound, and you are not now newly set free. But there was never any bondage, and never any bound individual. A vast, formless, undifferentiated being is the truth of your nature. Inquire within yourself if it seems as if individualized. Inquire right into that very apparently individualized existence. And its true egoless, illimitable nature will be realized. There is only one self. Whether misinterpreted as an ego and its concomitant world, or as an individual and its concomitant embodiment, or known as it is, egoless, I-less, otherless. Where the possibility of even a trace of the imagined individuality or ego is gone, this is the natural or innate state. In this, there is nothing to disturb your peace. In this, your happiness is full. In this is the fullness of perfection. which is never marred or stained in any way. It is bodiless and thus birthless and actionless. It is not divided into a mind and its thoughts, and thus it is stateless. It is not in time, thus it is not an event that you would await. It simply is as it is for all eternity. Knowledge of that, and of yourself as that, and that alone, is realization. Inquire within yourself to see how this is so. And while thus seeking to know yourself as you truly are, if you have a question at any point, feel free to ask. Or if you wish to relate your own experience, please feel free to speak.